Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 3, Episode 3, Once Upon a Time. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within the episode to remind us what happens before we go ahead and rank the episode. So we start the episode in a dream sequence where Piper is dreaming that she's working at the club and Leo appears. And at first she's very happy because she thought that he wasn't going to come back, or rather she had belief that he was going to come back. However, he then devastates her by saying that he has been forbidden to ever see her again and he will not be back. And then she is woken up by Prue and realizes that the dream was too real to have been a true dream, and is now sure that Leo is not going to be coming back. Worried about Piper, Prue calls Phoebe, who is driving home, and Phoebe says that she's almost home, but then she almost hits a little girl named Kate, who is standing in the middle of the road and clearly frightened. Kate runs off, Phoebe chases, and sees Kate being attacked by something invisible, and brings her back to the manor where they call Kate's parents and they come to pick her up. And that is when they hear that Kate believes in fairies and that trolls are trying to capture her and that they live in the tweens. Because Phoebe definitely saw something invisible attacking her, she starts to do some research and realizes that all of the sisters had this same fairy friend named Lily, and that Prue's picture of Lily also happened to have a troll in it, and this is what makes Phoebe believe that they may be dealing with trolls and fairies, which live on a separate plane from reality, and in fact live in the in-betweens between reality and their enchanted plane alongside the trolls. They then go to visit Kate, who then tells them that she happened to find Thistle, the fairy princess, captured by trolls in a cave and rescued her and has been keeping her inside of her little music jewelry box. Well, it's not musical, so just a jewelry box of sorts that has a key on it to lock it to keep her safe from the trolls that she saved, but now the trolls are after her. And of course, Phoebe and Prue, because they are adults, are not able to see the fairy in order to help. However, then Thistle tells Kate that if she uses fairy dust, that she will then be able to give them sight because it will restore their innocence. So she sprinkles them with fairy dust. Prue and Phoebe regress to the minds of children and decide that they need Piper's help, and Phoebe takes the key to protect it while Kate stays with Thistle and the box, and they go to P3 where they cause a ruckus. And so when Piper arrives, they are singing If You're Happy and You Know It on the stage. And obviously Piper is a little bit like, what are you doing? But she has decided to be on strike because they stole her love, so she now doesn't want to help anybody. If she can't be happy, why should anybody else be happy? And she basically kicks them off the stage, kicks them out. Prue and Phoebe decide to go it alone. They go back home. Cole arrives, and they're still acting like children, or what could also be considered under the influence of something. Cole then asks to use their bathroom. They reluctantly allow him in to do so, and he shimmers up to the attic where he transforms into Balthazar in order to try to steal the Book of Shadows. Prue and Phoebe walk in, see him in his demonic form, and he quickly shimmers out. But then as they are leaving, because they are distracted by his demonic form, Phoebe stops in the door, which happens to be an in-between. And this causes the trolls to steal the key. and push her and Prue down the stairs, where they, due to the trauma, return back to their adult minds and realize that they're never going to be able to help Kate if they're acting like children. And so Prue decides that she is going to create a spell with the power of three to try to do something similar to the fairy dust, but allow them to keep their adult mind. And in the meantime, Phoebe calls Piper to try to convince her to help them as they need the power of three. Piper, while at the club, starts to experience a string of clumsiness and bad luck, which is caused by the trolls, which know that the witches are helping Kate and want to stop that. Piper does decide, even though she is on strike, she yells at the sky a bit about how she is a good person, she's a good witch, she doesn't deserve to have all of this happen to her, but she does come home. She says the spell with her sisters, and then they go over to Kate's, where Kate is being actively attacked by trolls. They arrive just in time to see her being dragged under the bed, where a troll uses fairy dust to turn her into a fairy as well. And obviously, unfortunately, because Piper was still not open-minded or really truly ready to help, the spell initially doesn't work and they aren't able to see the fairies in order to help Kate. However, of course, once Kate is kidnapped, Piper has a crisis of conscience, realizes that the innocent has to come first, and once she has that realization, the spell kicks in and they are able to see a male fairy hovering in the window, which they then follow into the park to the cave where Kate initially saved Thistle, and the sisters go in there, fight the trolls, save Thistle and Kate, who has been turned into a fairy. And at first, Kate isn't going to want to go home. She wants to stay a fairy. However, then Piper tells her that she understands how sad she is, and that it's obviously sad that her dad left. But remember how sad she was when her dad left. That's how sad everyone will be if she never comes home. And Kate does decide to return to being a human. And then it is assumed that she gets sent back to her parents. Meanwhile, at home, the sisters arrive back after their battle, and the fairies leave them some flowers alongside the keys that they had hidden um, as a thank you for saving their princess. And when they go into the living room, Piper basically says that she now understands why they don't want witches and white lighters to be together, because they both have difficult jobs. Leo has to orb away at all hours. He may be gone for some time. And if she's going to melt down every single time that he is gone, then then she won't be able to do her job saving innocents, and neither will he. And so she understands that if that is the sacrifice she has to make, then she's willing to make it, to not be with Leo. Then, as she is heading upstairs to bed, Leo orbs onto the stairs and basically says, I don't know what you said or did, but the elders have decided to put us on probation, essentially. Well, Phoebe's words is probation, but essentially the powers that be are giving them the chance to prove that they can be together and it not be any sort of detriment to any innocence. And if they can prove that, then eventually they will be allowed to stay together and get married. And they happily go up the stairs. And then Phoebe calls Cole, who surprisingly answers the phone in his office at 2 a.m. and basically apologizes for being a little bit out of it when he had come, and basically set up times to meet, and he basically celebrates that he is getting closer, and his shadow goes to report to the Triad that he has gotten a little bit closer. And that is where this episode ends. Which means that it is now time for our rankings. And on this channel, we rank on two lists, a mostly objective ranking list, which is absent emotional influence, though bias and judgment can still apply, and then the personal ranking, which is where all of the emotional influence moves to, since it's not part of that mostly objective ranking list. But as always, we will start with our mostly objective rank values in order to determine the mostly objective ranking for this episode. So first off, I've highlighted all the ones that apply, and we start with our single episode supporting character introduction, which is Kate. We then get, and that's worth 1 point, sorry. And then we get our multi-season main character development, which I think is Cole. This is the first time that we get to see his demon side, the red with the black stripes. Um, and we already knew he was like demonic in nature, but this is when we get to see the monstrous side, and that he is after the Book of Shadows. And so that is worth 4 points. We then have our multi-season main character growth, which of course is to do with Piper. At the start of the episode, Piper has gone on strike. She is upset that she has lost her love and she doesn't want to work for the powers that be anymore. So, screw the innocents, screw good, screw all of it. She doesn't get to be happy, nobody else does either. That's her attitude. But we see as she goes through that, when it is an innocent that is actually in danger, she eventually steps up, and then she is the one who is able to empathize with Kate to bring Kate back to her humanity, and then at the end finally understands why the relationship that she was in with Leo was forbidden and accepts that she can't be with Leo if it's going to have the consequence of her melting down, turning her back, going on strike every time he might disappear for a little bit of time while they are working. So it's, I think, pretty significant character growth between where she starts at the start of the episode and where she ends at the end of the episode. So that's worth 4 points. We then also get our world building, which of course are the fact that fairies and trolls are real, that there is an enchanted realm that is on another plane of existence to our own, and that fairies and trolls can enter into our realm through in-betweens, and the midnight hour is the biggest tween time in which they are able to all make their way through and basically be a part of our world for a little bit of time, and then also that fairy dust exists, and that it allows for the recovery of innocence, which essentially amounts to mental regression. Then we have our negatives, and there were a couple for the episode. The first one, of course, is negative messaging and behavior. I do think this was minor because of the show, but if it was in reality, I would be very concerned. So basically, Phoebe almost hits their child, brings Kate back to their house, calls the parents arrive, take her home, thank them for, seeing her home safe. But then like the next day, Prue and Phoebe go to the house and then ask to visit with the child alone unsupervised. And I don't know what kind of excuse they could have given, wanting to make sure she was all right, but then they did that last night. So not really sure what they said to the parents, but the parents here, I find their actions a little questionable because grown adult strangers come to my house and say they want to meet with my child alone unsupervised. Even if they had helped my child in the past, I don't like from almost hitting my child, I don't think I would be leaving them alone with my child unsupervised. Like, I just feel like that's a really irresponsible thing for a parent to do. Now, obviously, in this show, we know Piper and Phoebe and Prue are all good witches, that Kate is the innocent, that they are meant to help her, and that that is what they are doing, and that is their only and sole motivation. So, like I said, in the show, it doesn't come off as such a big deal because we know the character, morals, ethics, etc. of the sisters and know that they would never harm a child, that they are actively helping the child. But, like, in reality, the parents don't know that. And they're letting grown adult women into their home, to their child's bedroom, with their child, alone, unsupervised, having no idea what they're going to say, what they want to do, anything. Very irresponsible behavior. Like I said, in the show, not a big deal because we know both sides. But in reality, that would be terrible. Terribly irresponsible. That's worth the -2 points. And then we, of course, have our main relationship regression or breakup, and this has to do with Leo's initial message. So we know that by the end of the episode, Piper has proven herself and been given a chance, but at the start of the episode, we do have Leo coming down and giving that message that, like through her dream vision, that he is not going to be seeing her again and he is never coming back. And that, of course, would be a definitive ending to their relationship. And I think a further regression because when he was kidnapped, there was always a chance that, he'd escape, he'd come back, and this is him coming back and saying, yeah, we're done. It's not happening. I can't see you. I'm not going to be back again, blah, blah, blah. Officially ending that. Of course, at that time, that's what he believes, and that's what Piper believes. And so I think it's worth the negative points in this case, even though it does turn out well in the end. But with all of those points being considered, that makes this episode objectively an 8 out of 10 episode. So, as a reminder of our mostly objective rankings so far for season 3, in first place we have The Honeymoon's Over, second, The Magic Hour, or just Magic Hour, and then in third, this episode, Once Upon a Time. Alright, and then for my personal ranking, I have to say that this episode has always appealed to me on a very fundamental level. I love the idea of the fairies and the trolls and this magical in between. I love all of the comedy that comes from the mental regression due to the fairy dust. Even like Cole being so completely curated. Like when he's asking Phoebe out and he originally wants to come to the manor and she says, no, just meet me at the club because Piper's going through something. He literally, while he's talking on the phone, brings up Billy from Chick Flick, who is, we know, Phoebe's ideal man, her first crush, and that movie character. And like he's literally got a folder open about all her information and like brings it up and he's like literally curating himself into her ideal to try to get into this house. And then it doesn't even matter because when he goes to the house, he just has to use the restroom. And Phoebe and Prue are so distracted and mentally young that they just quite hilariously let him in, telling him that he needs to be quick after asking him if it's number 1 or number 2. And it's absolutely hilarious. And then there's that whole romantic side of Piper going through losing Leo and then, him being returned once she has her character growth. I just love everything about this episode. And even like the negative that was from the objective list with like regards to Kate's parents. Again, like even though I would say it's a negative in reality, within the show and the context of the show, not a big deal, not enough to like bring me down on how much I love the show. And I also love that they didn't make us wait to get Leo back that long because I feel like if they had waited, well, like if they had waited like one more episode, fine. But I'm glad that they didn't even make us wait one episode, that he came back at the end of this episode because I do not like drawn out sadness. And they didn't do that. So, very much liked that. I gave it a 10 out of 10. It's one of my favorites. It's one of the most memorable in the series. Loved it. That brings our season 3 ranking so far on our personal ranking to first place is this one, Once Upon a Time. Second is Magic Hour. And then in third is The Honeymoon's Over. And so now we come to our series ranking so far, which of course is where we are ranking each of the seasons against each other. And on our mostly objective ranking, season 2 came in first with a score of 75%. Season 1 is in second. Season 3 so far we gathered 28 out of a possible 220 points. On our personal ranking, Season 1 stayed in first place with a score of 71.50%. Season 2, not quite the same caliber as Season 1 was, and it scored only 56.82%. However, Season 3 is starting strong with a total of 27 points out of 220 so far. We've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 3, Episode 3, Once Upon a Time. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.